Until that time, we'll be voting against this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Call Andrew Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I take a call on behalf of New Zealand First with the Building Amendment Bill number 4. And Mr. Chairman, it was somewhat disappointing to hear from Minister Williamson using the most of his time in his address to say what was not in this bill rather than what was in this bill. And to hear from the Minister comments such as low-risk building will have next to no scrutiny. Low-risk building will have next to no scrutiny really does raise alarm bells for New Zealand First and indeed for many New Zealanders throughout New Zealand who have seen building effects such as the leaky building homes situation that came out of the national government in the 1990s. And this bill is more about, Mr. Chairman, excluding things, and if you read the bill, it seems to exclude more things than include things. And when you start looking at what is exempted, it exempts in the future any compliance requirements from a local authority to build the likes of carports, pergolas, outbuildings 10 square metres or less, interior alterations to non-residential buildings. It moves into retaining walls and all sorts of other things that become excluded. And Mr. Chairman, when you start excluding all these various things, you open up a situation where consumers, the public of New Zealand, start being put at risk. People do stand on decks. People do stand under pergolas. People do walk through or park in carports. And if many of these structures just start to be thrown up by any old person without any compliance requirements at all, we will end up with a very, very Mickey Mouse situation of building in this country. And I can foresee, as we saw in this last decade, the leaky home situation, and where much of this is now going to be self-regulating, and where the likes of the Master Builders Association and other such entities, there will be self-regulation, and there will be far less scrutiny by local authorities and councils. And as a result of that, we have the potential here, Mr. Chairman, of setting up for the next decade and the decade after another whole leaky building situation made and brought about by yet another national government. It would seem that the National Party doesn't learn from its past mistakes, and Minister Williamson certainly appears, having been in a national government in the 1990s, which changed the building code, which allowed monolithic cladding to be applied directly to kiln-dried timber, and then we ended up with that very monolithic cladding cracking and getting into the untreated timber and having rotting houses as a result. That same National Party, some 15, 20 years later now, is saying, let's take away a lot of the safeguards, let's remove a lot of the local authority controls in terms of oversight of building. Let's have a much more self-regulated building industry on the premise that this will reduce building costs. But, Mr. Chairman, while it might, on the face of it, reduce some costs of building, some compliance costs of building, what is the long-term cost to New Zealand? What is the long-term cost in terms of health and safety of New Zealanders if structures are put up that basically don't come up to scratch? This bill, as the Minister also said, does not address building skills in New Zealand. So we could be faced with a situation during this whole period through this decade as a result of this legislation that builders who may not necessarily have qualifications that would be expected of them, because they may, for instance, not have been trained in this country. They may have been trained under different circumstances in other countries where perhaps their building codes are not quite the same, or their building practices are not quite the same as in New Zealand. we may well find that in the future, when questions are asked as to why did that carport fall down, or why did that pergola suddenly drop? Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair.
Andrew Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You don't have to look around. I was the only one standing. But thank you, Mr. Chair.
You always look around.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. It's very fortunate this will be. It's very fortunate that this will be on Hansard because when it's on Hansard and where the warning bells are given and where the government is on notice that what you are doing is once again revisiting a potential situation of putting New Zealanders at risk, then let's look at this Hansard recording perhaps in 10 years' time and say, how did that happen? Why did we change all these things and bring in self-regulation and bring in this legislation that basically saw a repeat, the Leaky Homes thing revisited all over again? Mr. Chair, it mentions in this bill that contractors who exceed $20,000 of work will be required to provide a written contract. But what happens, Mr. Chair, if the contract is $19,999.99 and that contractor does one bit of the work and his brother, who's a different contractor, does another $19,999.99 for another bit of the work, and then his cousin does some more of the work for another $19,999.99 and multiples of that. What happens then, Mr. Chair? Where's the written contract in that? And where's the safeguards for New Zealand and multiples of that? Also, where it says these entities will be required to give written contracts and they have to give their background as to their capabilities. Again, how often have we seen Mr. XYZ Builder 2008 Limited not being around and then disappearing and starting up a new thing as Mr. ABC Builder 2010 Limited in a totally different guise? How will that be addressed? And I would ask I'd ask the Minister to take a call on this and tell us how will these sorts of things be addressed? How will multiples of under $20,000 be addressed? How will people going under various names or through various window companies or through various other entities that they may be operating, how will that be addressed? How will the building skills requirement be addressed? How will we know that builders who may not have been trained in New Zealand and have come from other jurisdictions with other practices and build, how will we know that they are doing what is right by New Zealanders? And Mr. Chairman, how will we know that, for instance, in the case of buildings that are less than 10 square metres, and that's a reasonable sized room, how will we know that, because there's no requirement for any permit for these, that these small structures will not be going up all over the back lawns of Auckland because of the housing shortage? And for many people in Auckland who currently are perhaps squeezed into three-bedroom homes with large families, how will we ensure that they are not themselves putting up substandard 10 square metre outhouses on their back lawn for children or family or extended family to live in, with next to no scrutiny by any local authority as to how that structure was built and whether it's fire code compliant, whether it's structurally sound or anything? Tell us, Minister, how will we stop across Auckland back lawns all through Manukau, all through your electorate, Minister, how will we stop people putting up such structures under 10 square metres? So, Mr. Chair, there's a lot of questions in this. The Minister also mentioned about joint and several situation versus proportionate liability. Again, that's long overdue and it should have been addressed before now, as it has been in other countries, because the last man standing in this country always means that it tends to be the local authority, because everybody else has disappeared, they've gone west, they've closed their companies, or they've shot through to Australia or wherever else, and the only one remaining tends to be the local authority who perhaps was involved in signing it off. So, Mr. Speaker, we would like that addressed as well, New Zealand First. But there are many, many things. You could drive a bus through half of this, but at the end of the day, Mr. Chairman, this bill is more about exempting things. This bill is more about the National Party making it easier for things to be done without compliance. And this basically means that New Zealanders face another risky decade or so coming up where perhaps New Zealanders will be saying, how did we lower the standards once again?
Members, we come to the vote. First, we have the Minister's amendments to Part 1 as set out on SOP number 357. The question is that the amendments be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. I ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 votes opposed.
Green Party.
13 opposed.
New Zealand First.
7 votes opposed.
Maori Party.
3 in favour.
Mana.
1 opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 opposed.
Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 64, the noes are 55. The amendments are agreed to. The question now is that Part 1 is amended stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. So, party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 votes opposed.
Green Party.
13 opposed.
New Zealand First.
7 votes opposed.
Maori Party.
3 in favour.
Sorry, I didn't hear the last
Can we just have
3 in favour.
3 in favour?
Mana.
1 opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 opposed.
Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 64, the noes are 55. Part 1 is amended will stand part. The question now is that Part 2 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 votes opposed.
Green Party.
13 opposed.
New Zealand First.
7 votes opposed.
Maori Party.
3 in favour.
Mana.
Sorry, 1 opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United
1
Future.
in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 opposed.
Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 64, the noes are 55. Part 2 will stand part. The question is that Schedule 1 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 votes opposed.
Green Party.
13 opposed.
New Zealand First.
7 votes opposed.
Maori Party.
3 in favour.
Mana.
1 opposed.
ACT New
1
Zealand.
in favour.
United
1 in
Future.
favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 opposed.
Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 64, the noes are 55. Schedule 1 will stand part. We now come to the clauses. The question is, a Clause 1 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 votes opposed.
Green Party.
13 opposed.
New Zealand First.
7 votes opposed.
Maori Party.
3 in favour.
Mana.
1 opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 opposed.
Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 64, the noes are 55. Clause 1 will stand part. Members, we come to Clause 2, but first we have the Minister's amendments as set out on SOP number 357. The question is that the amendments be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. So party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 opposed.
Green Party.
13 opposed.
New Zealand First.
7 votes opposed.
Maori Party.
3 in favour.
Mana.
1 opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 opposed.
Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 64, the noes are 55. The amendments are agreed to. The question now is that Clause 2 as amended stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. So party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 opposed.
Green Party.
13 opposed.
New Zealand First.
7 votes opposed.
Maori Party.
3 in favour.
Mana.
1 opposed.
Act New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 opposed.
Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 64, the noes are 55. Clause 2 as amended will stand part. The question now is that Clause 3 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. So party votes called for. Ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 votes opposed.
Green Party.
13 opposed.
New Zealand First.
7 votes opposed.
Maori Party.
3 in favour.
Mana.
1 opposed.
Act New
1
Zealand.
in favour.
United
1 in
Future.
favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 opposed.
Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 64, the noes are 55. Clause 3 will stand part. I will report this bill with amendment.
The House is resumed. Mr Chairman.
Mr Speaker, the committee has considered the Building Amendment Bill number 4 and reports it with amendment. Mr Speaker, I move that the report be adopted.
The question is that the report be adopted. As many of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. This bill is set down for third reading forthwith.
Mr Speaker.
I call the Honourable